Is already off the bat and going. We're going to talk about some of the developments happening here today. This is Chiefs Breakdown here on RGR Football. Everybody, this is RGR Football. I'm Ryan Tracy. This is Ryan going rogue. That's what RGR is, and that today is what I'm doing. Everybody else is enjoying their holiday, and I want to start. If you're out there right now, for all of you that have served, and for those especially that are deployed now and serving, happy Memorial Day, and thank you for everything you've done for us, and all of us that get to sit around and make these videos and talk about a sport all the time. I appreciate that very much, and I know so does the whole fan base. So welcome. This one's for you. This is the Chiefs Breakdown because this should be getting us back into the flow of what happens on Sunday nights. Now, Sunday night around RGR Football is always informational. It's always post-game when it is during the season. And when it's this time of the year, we talk about what's been going on in the individual camps as we start to hear more and more. Now, the Chiefs are in meetings this weekend. I do believe they have some time off as well, so we're not seeing practice, but what we did see, or what we found out from the 2 days of practice that we did get to see bits and pieces of, is there's a lot going on. It feels like a normal OTA to me, in that there's a lot of combinations. There's a lot of things getting felt out about who's going to be where and how can they run in groups, not anywhere near setting a depth chart. But it is about exploring what each player can do to fit into this offense in particular. Now, the defense is a little bit more, I think, defined. I don't think it's quite as liquid in terms of what you have to do, what you might be asked to do, the creative side of it. We'll get to that in a bit. But I wanted to start here, and I have some visuals of some of the things that we're hearing about, and that is that everybody's rotating through at the specialty positions. It is kind of a free-for-all to try to get a feel for who's where with what and who's really going to be able to step into a new role. Now, obviously, outside of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce, the pass catchers are relatively new. There's McCole Hardman. He's kind of the solid stay at wide receiver. Travis is kind of the solid stay at tight end. And then obviously CEH. A lot of change outside of that. So you got to explore. You got to see what's happening. And this was an interesting shot that I found because it does highlight the fact that there is McCole, there is MVS, there is Juju, there is Sky Moore. We're going to talk about all those guys here coming up. But right now, there are some situations where Ronald Jones at running back, as well as Josh Gordon at wide receiver, are getting in there with the first team. Now, this may just be 7s. This may be 11s as well. My guess is that they're rotating them through from what I've heard. I don't have that on solid information, but that's what I'm getting. So I think that that is a positive sign, and I just wanted to highlight that because as we take a bigger look at it, yes, Juju's out there. Juju was brought in to be a starter, so that's that level of commitment. Obviously, Travis, Mahomes, etc. So when you're sprinkling Josh Gordon in, they still have hopes for him, it seems. They're still trying to figure out what they have in him. So while I still think he's locked in a fight for that 5th-ish spot on the roster in terms of the wide receiver depth chart, clearly they're giving him a look, and they did sign him back for that reason. And they brought in Rojo as well, and he's going to play a big role. I think we all kind of understand that. And I think that that's good. That's what you want from Rojo at this time because he needs to get going. And that's what you want to have in terms of multiple players that can maybe do something for you, and it's early. So you might as well give him as many looks, as many types of challenges as you possibly can to get a feel what you have. Now, I bring this one up because this is a player in DeAndre Baker that has been kind of maligned. I have him down there in, again, that fight for that 5th-ish kind of role, maybe below, because we expect to have LJ and McDuffie and Fenton as your top 3, then Lonnie Johnson trying to fight in there as well. He could end up one of the top 3. Right now, Rashad Fenton is still on the sidelines, so that does have an effect. We do have to watch out for that. But in the end, you never quite know what's going to happen. And the defense has got to come along. They've got to make some advances because clearly what the Tyreek Hill trade did was to allow all of this to happen on the defensive side of the ball. And you see here that Nick Bolton's changed his number for For those that are still getting used to some of those things like I am, I'm trying to show some of it because Nick here in 32 now, that's what we're expecting. Justin Reed's behind him in the background. Again, going back to that 20 number, it's going to take a little bit of time, but a lot of get on there, get used to where who's going to be. And these are the two guys. This shot was one of my favorites because these are the two guys that they're counting on being leaders. I don't think they want, a single leader any longer in what they had in Tyrann Mathieu. Tyrann is a vocal leader. Frank Clark is not. From what I understand, Frank wants to, carry his edge around, carry his attitude around, let that rub off on people, and really be an example rather than a vocal leader. Same thing with Anthony Hitchens. Like, he would do that, but I don't think that was in his nature. And so now what you're trying to do is allow Justin Reed and Nick Bolton to go into those roles. And I thought this just illustrated it kind of nicely. DiCaprio Bootle is another guy that is getting reps, as I understand, and getting a good hard look. And I like that because he and Baker, I think, are towards the bottom, could be 5, 6, back in that range. You also have the rookies. I'll have to get to them here. I think I have some shots of both Jalen Watson as well as Josh Williams that are working hard, as we understand. I'm hearing good things, getting a lot of looks at Josh Williams in particular. Now, he's coming from Fayetteville. That's a tough gamble moving up. So he's got to show something, not just in camp, but he's got to start now. He's got to show some flashes, and I like that. And I think Bootle is the guy that was in his spot last year. Now, Bootle was an undrafted free agent, but in the same vein of he's got to get in, he's got to show something to get him to the next step, And that's what Bootle did. He came into this camp last year and did well enough to get himself a few more reps and get himself into camp where he actually earned a spot on the practice squad, was able to stay in town. And that puts him within striking distance of the roster here. I think he's in the fight as well. We're going to have to see. Now, obviously, everybody wants to talk about the wide receivers. And there's plenty of them. This is MVS. This is your new look at number 11. Get used to MVS in this number. Now, it's not going to be the same as it was before with 11. That's okay. But you're going to see a lot of them. And still a little bit thicker than I expected. Looks like he's gained a little bit of weight from what he played at Green Bay, and I like that. I do think he's going to have to be physical off the line, so I want an option from him to be that kind of tough release kind of guy. Need to be seen here, and honestly, this drill is showing you that they're working on releases as you will with every wide receiver group, but he in particular, it's a good shot for him to see how he's going along. Now, I'm trying to kind of bounce all over the place and hit all the big topics. We're going to go through everything that we've been able to pick around. And Leo Chanel I need to see him in person. I am just excited to see what he brings in person and how they're using him. Lining up mostly at Mike at the second team right now. When they are in the 3-backer sets, he is hanging out over the edge, as I understand. It doesn't feel like that's set in stone, but it feels like that's the goal, right? They need a Sam, and they need to be able to deploy a Sam at times. And I think they will play with some more creative personnel packages that may include 3 linebackers when you have 3 linebackers that can run like this. With now Nick Bolton being the slowest of the 3, and you saw what he did in the pass game last year, I think that sets them up to be an athletic linebacker core. Now, there's a couple of UDFAs. We'll talk about them probably coming up this week. But this is going to be a 3-man rotation off the get-go. So when they're a nickel, I'm expecting Bolton and Gay off the beginning to start the season, at least halfway through. But I do expect that Leo will rotate in there as the other off Mike-ish type backer, knowing that Willie's going to probably travel outside with split outs and that kind of thing if they're trying to use motion to detect what the Chiefs nickel is doing. So that makes a lot of sense for me. And I'm sure that he's under a lot of like bombardment of how much calls and alignments and visual cues that he's got to pick up because he wasn't asked to do that at Wisconsin. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings. Mike Dana is quietly the guy that's getting reps that we're not talking about, because we'll see another shot here in a minute where it's some young guys in this group. They are thin at the position. They're thin along the defensive line in general. And I think they know that. Again, I won't put out a possibility of an acquisition, but you never know. And speaking of acquiring, I want to acquire you. If you're not one of us already, make sure you like this particular video. Make sure you sub to the channel and become part of Rogue Nation and hit that bell so you're with us every step of the way this summer as we get ready for the next regular season. If you happen to be wanting to join the memberships, if you join at the rookie level or above, that's like the third tier and above, you get into the Discord that is our private community for our members, the elite of Rogue Nation. And that's where a lot of stuff, a lot of serious conversation goes on about this particular position in the edges. What are they going to do? How are they going to move forward with that? There's a lot to do there. Now, if I didn't say it earlier, it's Memorial Day. I'm with my family. I'm recording this a little bit ahead of time. So this breakdown is for you guys for that. I will be live on Monday night Q&A when everybody's getting home for the weekend. I'll be home in time to do that. So we'll be live tomorrow night. Don't forget that. Now, this group is what's really going to be intriguing because you have Trent McDuffie out here. You have Joshua Williams. I mean, just take a look at Joshua Williams. He's clearly farther away, yet he's still a good 4 inches taller. I mean, that's the size difference. And for everyone who was concerned about Trent McDuffie, I think this does a good job of illustrating that he's right in line with what you get with DeAndre Baker, who's right in line with what you get in terms of size with Rashad Fenton. So McDuffie, Fenton, Baker, all about the same size. Now, you can see build-wise, McDuffie's not quite as stout as Baker is, who's not quite as stout as Fenton is. So that's kind of the pecking order of the guys that are right there about the 6 foot line, really about 5'11". I'd have to check all their measurements, but that's a good look at it. Now, that's rotational. Now, it gets into who then is going to push beyond that. Obviously, L'Jarius Sneed is probably who these guys are all watching when this snap was taken, but he will be the leader in that group at that position. Who will he be fighting against? Well, this is the tough stuff because Justin Ross, we've seen some highlights from him, but he's also a guy that's lower down the depth chart that is going to be going against the ones at times. And so, getting releases from him is going to be important. He is the other guy with MVS that I think can line up and be successful out at the X. And so really want to see if he's recovered fully, like how well he moves. We're not going to get a shot at OTAs. We're going to have to rely on Matt Derrick, who will be here on Wednesday, so don't miss that. Having eyes on makes a huge difference, and he is going to be our eyes and ears, not only through OTAs, but through training camp, through the season, through it all. You guys know Matt Derrick, and if you don't, definitely hit those. He's on Wednesdays on Locked On Chiefs. He'll make some appearances here as well, and we're going to get information that we can't get anywhere else from him. So, and then, of course, we showed Mike Dana before, and now he's working with a lot of the young guys. George Karlaftis is one of the young guys, but GK is going to be the guy because everyone thinking about, hey, signing another guy, rotating the defensive ends. I don't think it's Frank Clark that plays the full slate of snaps. I think it's Karlaftis. I think he's got the energy. I think he's got the motor for it. He's obviously going to have a transition into the pros. He's going to have a learning curve. But I don't think that reduces snaps. I think, honestly, and I kind of mentioned this last week when one of the members asked a question in last week's Q&A on Monday night. And again, for you who don't know us, I'm live every Monday night for Q&A at 6 Central. And I really think that if you're going to get the most out of Frank Clark, if you're going to work to make what was one of the worst, at least finishing pass rushes in the NFL better, saving Frank Clark for the pass rush downs may actually help. And so then is it Mike Dana and Karlaftis that gets starts and Frank rotates in? Could be. Are there other guys that can rotate in? There are, but I do think that Karlaftis is a guy that can handle the snap load. He's great against the run. He's obviously a power rusher. We've talked all about how he wins, but then it translates to how much can he win and how much can he play base. And I'm confident that he can do it all, almost all of the time. You can see even in pads, he's a hulking dude, and that's going to help. He's bigger than Frank Clark. He's not bigger than Turk Warden, I'll say that, but it goes a long way. As we go through, on the other side, another shot of Josh Gordon, looking still pretty lean. Obviously, Josh is over 30 years old now. He's going to catch passes from Mahomes, and maybe that's what it is for Josh Gordon pushing with Ross and Fountain, I think, for those last 2 spots amongst the wide receivers on the 53-man roster. It is about knowing this guy, Mahomes. It's about having some kind of chemistry, not just what did you do last year, because clearly didn't get a lot of targets, Josh Gordon. Didn't get a whole lot of chemistry built because of the timing. I think this is the time where you can say, listen, I've been on the field with you now. Now let's get it down. And so if Josh Gordon can push through that, it's a race against Ross and against Fountain, who I think did basically the same thing that Gordon did last year in terms of targets. So it's wide open down there. And I know there's a couple of other names folks want to see happen. I'm not seeing anything yet with any ascension past those three as the last three guys on the wide receiver depth charts. Nice thing to see is that not only Nick Bolton out there, but obviously Willie Gay is out there a lot with Justin Reed. And that is important because Reed can come down and play in that like box-ish area. He can also play. He's going to be all over the place. I'm really interested to see how they settle down on how much they're going to use him in each spot. But communication between Reed as the top safety, unless they're going to use Juan over the top of him, there's still that middle tier. So he and Willie in particular, he and Nick Bolton in particular, have to be able to communicate. So having these guys on the field together right now from the get-go, obviously you brought in Justin Reed in free agency, so that investment alone demands that he be on the field. But working on communication right now, that's what's going to help this defense. Another shot at Josh Williams, getting some reps. Like that. Reed, again, it's hard to pick up faces through helmets. I know you guys know, but this will all come. Just getting used to seeing the numbers that are out there. Juju coming in thicker than I expected, actually. More so, maybe it's the uniform color difference. I don't know. I didn't think he was quite as defined and quite as bulky in Pittsburgh as he's looked so far this preseason. And here's another shot. This is Jalen Watson. Now, this is the guy that isn't an athlete that can win just on athleticism. He is a guy that is instinctual, is physical, and can really take the spot of some of the physical guys that we've seen in the past play in this defense. If you were going to compare him to somebody in the past in terms of his potential, of his role, of what he can become, Josh Williams can run. He can do that kind of thing. Jalen Watson, this is your Bashaud Breeland, Sean Smith type guy. Physical, long, doesn't have the long speed, so he's susceptible deep, but he has to be hands-on defender, and I think that's important. You have someone very similar. I don't want to make the comparison because they're both on the roster, but he and Lonnie Johnson have similar traits. Lonnie Johnson's been able to make some transition. We got to see what Lonnie Johnson does in this defense as well. And he's another one that I think both those guys need to be more on the physical side than on the space side. If you're going to play space, if you're going to play a lot of more mixed zone or more definitive zones that can shift, then that becomes McDuffie's kind of thing. That becomes Rashad Fenton's kind of thing because Fenton's played safety. He's done it all. You've seen him be very productive in space, and that's going to be key. Here's the interesting shot. Didn't have confirmation until I saw this. Josh Kando is practicing. So there you go. We found out a few days ago that Jody Fortson is back on the field and looking good. From what I understand, Kando is out there and practicing as well. Now, I haven't gotten any information about how well, but he's out there and is moving. This is Mike Dana in the middle, and this is Malik Herring on the other side. Now, Herring got a little bit of pub for rookie camp, but that's rookie camp. This is now OTAs where if you're in the rotation now you're getting serious looks. And so beyond Frank Clark and George Karlaftis, this is your defensive end group. And that's what you got to look at. I like Mike Dana's confidence. I always have. He's always been a guy that's willing and able to do the dirty work, whether that's taking on doubles, whether it's shifting inside, whether it's trying to set the edge. Now, he's not a natural edge defender, but I think he's progressed. If he continues to progress where he can take early downs and then let other players come in like these two, or if he starts in place of Frank Clark, Mike Dana is going to be a guy that is another workhorse. So you want the young guys to kind of attach and grow that work ethic off of what Mike Dana does already, and then see how performance-wise leads you to who goes where, when, and how many snaps. This is the guy right here. And you'll note that the way that he's lining up here, this is Glazer 69 here in the middle, who is running as the backup center, as I understand. So this is Kennard over on the other side. And I guess they've taken a look at a couple of different spots. I do think right tackle is going to be his main gig, but taking a look at him in multiple spots is smart because you hope that Lucas Niang will return at some point. We don't have confirmation on that or where he is on his rehab spectrum, et cetera, et cetera. But Kennard's got the attitude. He's got the physicality. He's got the length. He needs to work on his feet. It looks like he is significantly trimmer here than he was on his college film that I graded myself. So I'm really excited to see that because the fact that it looks like they're lining him up here on the left side where he's played right most of his career and he's trimmer, that goes very, very long way to say that he's made the commitment to get better. He's made the commitment to make his feet better. That is I think the weaker part of his game is his positional movement with his feet. His kick was okay, but he's certainly not asked to do that much in college. He's got to work on a kick step. But just being more athletic now, being more in shape, I think that bodes well for him. If Lucas Niang gets back, or when he gets back, and they don't think he's ready to stay the starter, he could be a swing option at this point. We'll see if he gets more of these reps here through OTAs. And obviously, when we get to camp, we'll be tracking what he lines up at every day, and we'll have a better idea of what the team is thinking. LJ Sneed clearly is going to be a guy that Steve Spagnuolo was going to rely on. I think this was a really nice surprise that he blossomed into everything they thought he would and everything that I thought he would when I saw his college film. Because if you guys remember, and if you're new and you don't remember me going on and on about Sneed before the Chiefs drafted, it's because he stood out so well athletically and versatility-wise. He could play safety, he could play corner, he could play nickel. He could do all that in college. But I didn't go to watch his college film. I went to go watch Amik Robertson, who was on his college team, and I found LJ, and so did Spags. And I think they made a fourth-round selection, much like they did this year with Josh Williams, in the hopes that he could develop into a guy that they can rely on. Now, he had kind of an even, maybe even a slight downgraded season last year in his second campaign. This year, he's got to step way up. They're going to count on him, and they're going to ask him to take on a lot of number one wide receivers. I think he's up to the task, but we're going to track that. As you go through, I mean, we're number one. Lonnie Johnson, good for you. You got to have some guts to go take on a number one when you're a D-back. So, hey, good for you. I'm excited to see him in this defense, too, because I think Spags will be able to let him play closer to what his strengths are than he was asked to do in Houston. And I think Justin Reed is kind of the same way. Reed talked about being so excited about what this defense is going to be. I think Lonnie Johnson is going to be just as excited because it's going to allow him to get closer to what he really is as an athlete and as a player, much rather than trying to do something new like they asked him to do in Houston. This is your first look at Pacheco, first good image I've seen of him. Obviously, stout guy, going to look to make contact and hurt some people, and I can dig that. I'm just saying you can run off of guys too. You don't have to go hit him in the face. So let's keep that up. I'm really excited to see him and how he's adjusted his run style when we get to camp. Let's see. What do we got here? Number 2, this is Rojo. See, I'm still trying to learn numbers too. Working on pass game. I know that's an issue for everybody, and it's definitely something they're going to work on. And this was probably the last thing that I wanted to leave you guys with. It's not just the wide receiver thing. This is Justin Ross fielding punts. That's going to be important for him. If he can show anything, it doesn't have to be as the return man, but if he can do something on teams for Dave Toub that helps him make this roster, it may be key to him making this roster. So watch and pay attention to who's taking snaps as returner, as gunners, because that's what I think Ross might be able to make a little bit more living on and make himself a roster spot out. We're going to have to see how it progresses. It's a big challenge, I think, from what you saw in his offense last year. A lot of called adjustments, not a lot of sight adjustments, which he's going to have to do here in the league. He's going to have to do an Andy system. So if he can get a foothold here on special teams, I think that's going to make a big difference. So that's where I'm going to leave you guys with today. Those are the observations from the week. This is Chiefs Breakdown this week. This is where they're at. So again, happy Memorial Day to you. For all of you serving right now, thank you very much. And for all of you who have served, we appreciate you, even if we don't say it every day. For me and the crew here, we are going to continue to burn forward as we get more information about the team and about their changes and what's going on in Kansas City. Look for us tomorrow, live tomorrow night, Q&A, just like always. So for those of you that are out at the lake or whatever, if you get home in time, 6 Central, just like every other weekend, we'll be doing Q&A tomorrow night on Monday. And then our normal progression. We'll hope to get, I don't think Seth will be back this week. Dan and I will lock down on Thursday night, and we're working on some new things for you as well. So keep it tuned here. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell if you are not one of us already. Hope that you guys are enjoying your weekend. Thanks for